majorly this management tools are being implemented to reduce what? To reduce the time, to reduce the cost, as well as enhancing the effectiveness of policy making. Take an example of implementation of, it is e-governance. Implementation of e-governance ಆಗಿರಬಹುದು. Now e-governance ಅಂದ್ರೆ example ಕೊಡಿ ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, take an example of e-ಭೂಮಿ. One we call it as general management tools, and the second one we call it as ಏನಿಲ್ಲ, it is quality. Exam ಅಲ್ಲಿ majority quality ಕೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. Majority the questions are with respect to what? The quality tools. Now it is, we call it as the management tools. Now what do you mean by management? We have already discussed. It is tools. Now first thing here is, now coming towards are the most important topic. Example question kele keltara. It is just star by hakkoli. It is important. Now the first thing here is, what do you mean by management? What do you mean by tools? Now while discussing about this topic, understand here, while discussing about this topic, we'll be discussing about introduction about the management tools. The second one, we will be discussing about what is the need of management tools, and the third one, we'll be discussing about the types of management tools, and the fourth one, with management tools, what is the significance, and the fifth one, we'll be discussing about what are the challenges of this management tools, along with the things way forward and measures ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕೂಡ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. Now sir, ಇದನ್ನ ಒಂದೊಂದೇ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮುಂಚೆ, what do you mean by management and what do you mean by tools? Management ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನಪ್ಪ? Now what is management? It is a person who is going for implementation of the policies which have been done by, we call it as administrator. Yes or no? Now administrator, normally he'll be doing what? He'll be going for a vision, or he'll be going for a goal of an organization, or he'll be going for aim of an organization. Sir, example kodi sir anta kelidre, take an example of our Indian Constitution. Under our part 4 of our Indian Constitution, which majorly talks about directives, nothing but directive principles of state policy. Now sir, a directive principles of state policy, now if I want to introduce on ground, can I implement it in the easier manner as it is mentioned in Constitution? Easy agata nodi. Ivat nodi example alli, it is example, we call it as Uttarakhand government is going for implementation of UCC at 12 o'clock. Now sir, don't you think it is mentioned just as a constitutional provision under article, under article 44? It is just a directives. Now sir, ee 44 na add ಮಾಡಿರತಕ್ಕಂತದ್ದು, it is 1950 ಅಲ್ಲಿ, 1949 or 1950 ಅಲ್ಲಿ we have added this. It is article 44, nothing but implementation of uniform civil laws across the country anta. But to implement this, we took how many years? Approximate 75 years time ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. Now sir, why? The reason is why? The reason here is, it is major agi we don't know exactly what challenges will be facing, and we exactly don't know will this project be effective anta. Now to study this, now to reduce the challenges or to reduce the effectiveness of the different, I can say, the visionary policies or the goal of an organization, idna reduce madodakoskara, it is in our public administration we have various tools, and that tools we call it as management tools. How do you know? For example, we have a goal. Now sir, ಈಗ ನನ್ನ goal ಇದೆ, nothing that my father's goal is think that ನಾನು IAS ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. Now don't you think will that be easier to implement? Ground ಬಂದಾಗ ಏನಾಗ್ತಿರುತ್ತೆ, It is while going for implementation, we'll be having n number of challenges and we'll be facing n number of, I can say, doubts, n number of, I can say, the cost effectiveness also. ದುಡ್ಡು ಎಷ್ಟು ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, ಟೈಮ್ ಎಷ್ಟು ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದು, ಫಾರ್ ಬೈ ಎಷ್ಟು ಡೆಡಿಕೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, all these challenges I'll be facing. Yes or no? Now sir, ಇದನ್ನ ರೆಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ನಮಗೆ ಟೂಲ್ಸ್ ಇದೆಯಾ ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, and that we call it as management tools. Nothing but, now what do you mean by tools now? Tools andre, what is tools now? It is, the tools is as simple as that, strategies. It is as simple as that, the strategy. It is strategy which has been used by a public administrator, to reduce the challenges and to increase the effectiveness of the different projects. ನೀವು ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಕೊಡಿ, ಒಂದು ನೋಡೋಣ. ನೀವೊಂದು ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಕೊಡಿ. ನಾವು ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಸ್ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು ಟೇಕ್ ಎನ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್, ಓಕೆ ಸ್ವಚ್ಛ ಭಾರತ ಹೋಗಬೇಡ, ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಟೇಕ್ ಎನ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಮಿಷನ್ ಕರ್ಮಯೋಗಿ. ಎಸ್, ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಟೇಕ್ ಎನ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಆಫ್ yesterday's we call it as Republic Day Parade. Now ಎರಡು ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋದಾದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು ಫಸ್ಟ್ one understand the recent one, we call it as the 76th Republic Day. 76th Republic Day. Now sir, Republic Day should be organized. It should be organized on ಯಾವಾಗ? It is ಬೇರೆ ದಿನ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತಾ? 26th January every year we are organizing this Republic Day. This is our goal of an organization. Now goal of the Prime Minister or goal of the President of India, the main target is this. Now if I want to implement or if I want to organize the Republic Day, will that be easier? It is no. Now sir, implement ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ it is not easier. Now ಏನೇನು challenges ಬರ್ಬೋದು ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, one can be with respect to cost. Second one can be with respect to what? It is time. Within limited time, I need to organize this. It is the third one, even nodi, it is gap between Republic Day and budget. We hardly have 1 week. Now within 1 week, everything should be set. Don't you think it is, again, I can see the time gap is also lesser. And the third major important one, it is time and cost jotege security should also be enormous, because we'll be absorbing the, I can say, it is guest tara followed by our state, or I can say head of the state, we call it as President of India, followed by other n number of dignitaries will be present in this Republic Day period. It is providing security is again a challenge. Now sir, idella nama problems baratilli. Now while going for implementation, I'll be facing n number of problems. Nothing that I, being a public servant, now don't you think I need to have some strategies? I should have some tools and techniques also. And that tools and techniques we call it as management tools. Sir, idu jotege innondu example kodi sir anta kelidre, take an example of, I can say, Mahakumbh Mela. Now Mahakumbh Mela, it is the people are, I can say, reaching from nook and corners. It is not only from India, it is outside India, they are reaching it to India. Now don't you think it's a challenge of UP government to organize, I can say, Mahakumbh Mela? Again, organize madbekadre, will it be easier sir andre? No, it will be n number of challenges. Now to reduce these challenges, we have management tools. Now management tools, we have general management tools, and the second one we call it as quality tools. We have quality, the tools also. Yes, okay, na artha aita management tools andre enik beku anta definition madana iga. It is first one we call it as the introduction. Now introduction includes three important things. One we call it as definition, second one we call it as uniqueness, and the third one, it is our stats or the facts or examples. Now, what is the definition of, I can say, management tools? In a definition, no. It is the systematic. It is the systematic, the tools, the systematic tools and the strategies. The systematic tools and the strategies which are being given it to yarge, which are being given it to a manager or a person who is going for implementation of policies to achieve what? To achieve the goal, to achieve the vision, or to achieve the aim of an organization. To achieve the goal or aim or vision of an organization, we call it as gotirlili. It is random agalla. It is systematic. Systematic tools and the techniques are the tools and strategies which are being given to an implementer or which has been given it to the manager to implement the goals of an organization. We call it as management tools. We call it as management tools. Now, what are the different examples we have? Examples, take an example of Chandrayana 2 and 3. It is Chandrayana. It is Chandrayana, the 2 and the 3 agirbodu from our science and technology, from ISRO techniques in the second one, organizing of Republic Day sessions, Republic Day, Mahakumbh Melas, or it can be implementation of different schemes or the programs. Yes, all those things. Okay, alva. Then nodidralla hospitality. It is flag hoist ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಪೋಲೆ ಬಿದ್ದೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. What does it shows? It shows lack of adequate check before implementation. ಹೆಂಗುರು ಬಿದ್ದೋಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪೋಲು, ಅಷ್ಟು ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಪೋಲು, ಅದು ಬಿದ್ದೋಗಿದೆ. Yes or no? It is, you should have some adequate checks. ಇವಾಗ ಏನಾಗತ್ತೆ ಬಿದ್ದಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ, it is the CM has also ordered saying that there will be adequate, I can say, control ಆಗತ್ತೆ. ಯಾರ್ಯಾರು who has, I can say, done a mistake on this, he or she will be penalized. Automatically ಯಾರು penalize ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ? DM ನ. Nothing but who should organize adequate, I can say, Republic Day sessions in the district. It is DM, his role. Yes. Nothing but ಯಾವ ಆಕ್ಟ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, it is ಯಾವ ಆಕ್ಟ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ? It is, we call it as the Fundamental Duties 1971 Act. Nothing but disrespecting the, I can say, it is the flags or national anthem, or it can be with respect to any national honors. 3 years jail term or fine or both. ಇವೆರಡರಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದಾಗುತ್ತೆ. Yes. Okay, ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬೇಕು ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ಏನೇನು ಆಗ್ಬೋದು. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? It is the uniqueness. Now, what will be the uniqueness about this? ಏನಪ್ಪ uniqueness? First, now uniqueness about this management tools. Now, majorly this management tools are being implemented to reduce what? To reduce the time, to reduce the cost, as well as enhancing the effectiveness of policy making. To enhance the policy making of the public policies. The policies. This is about our major introduction part. Second one. Okay, alva. Artha aita? It is second one. It is why we want this management tool, sir. Why we want this management tools? Try madi. It is the first and foremost one. Majority of the projects are unpredictable. It is even plan madidini, but how will the people respond? It is unpredictable, or I can say unpredictable. Take an example of Chandrayana 2 and Chandrayana 3. Now, Chandrayana 2 and Chandrayana 3, really the major challenge here is unpredictableness. Because of unpredictableness, the project has failed. First is unpredictable. It is, understand this, unpredictable, as well as as well as majority of the works are non-routine. It is unpredictable as well as non-routine. Sir, example kodi sir anta kelidre. Example kodi. It is unpredictable as well as non-routine. Take an example of implementation of the policies during COVID, during 1991 crisis time only. Now take an example of all the projects or majority of the projects. Majority of the projects are, we call it as unpredictable, and we call it as non-routine work also, excluding administrative work bit 2. All the R&D work comes under. It is non-routine. Take an example of implementation of, it is e-governance. Implementation of e-governance ಆಗಿರಬಹುದು. Now e-governance ಅಂದ್ರೆ example ಕೊಡಿ ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, take an example of e-ಭೂಮಿ. Now e-ಭೂಮಿ ಟೈಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಪ್ರಿಡಿಕ್ಟಬಲ್ನೆಸ್ ಗೊತ್ತಿತ್ತಾ, ಇಷ್ಟೇ ಎಫಿಷಿಯನ್ಸಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, exactly ಇಷ್ಟು percentage, how will people respond? No. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ take an example of it is, take an example of recent ಆಗಿ, it is governments, it is CBDC. Now what is the CBDC? It is central bank digital currency, or it is also called as e-rupee. It is e-rupee. It is, will this be predictable outcomes? Predictable nature irata. Is it, I can say, routine work, day to day life? No. Majorly adukoskara we want different tools, different strategies ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. First one. Second one, it is because of probabilistic, I can say, outcomes. Nothing but it is majority of the policy making which has been done by the government. It is not predictable. Rather, we call it as the probabilistic outcomes. It is probability ratili. Nothing but either it can be success or it can be failure. You can never say that predictable ishte agatte, ishte exactly percentage agatte. You can never say. Example kodi ನೀವು ನೋಡೋಣ. It is with respect to probabilistic, the technique, exactly, to increase the probability of success of the project. Exactly, Bapu, yes. It is second one, example. It is COVID vaccination, perfect, yes. It is seed clouding, or we call it as, it is cloud seeding. It is cloud seeding with the help of, I can say, dry ice, and we call it as silver iodide. Again, a probabilistic techniques. Take an example of success of inflation. The measures which has been taken up by the RBI, will that give rise to complete 100% accuracy? No. It's again, it is a probability. Either it can reduce or either it can increase also. Again, probability. Now, fourth example. Good example, Bibin. It is any government targets. Take an example of nutrition agirbodu. It is providing of, I can say, Ayushman Bharat healthcare benefits. Adi riti, take an example of, I can say, Poshan Abhiyan, the midday meals, NEP 2020. All these are what? All these are only and only nothing but it is the, I can say, probability estimate. It is all this comes with the probability. We can never predict the outcome. We can never predict the outcome. We call it as, the second one we call it as, it is probability based. It is probability. It is probability based outcomes. Probability based outcomes. ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಈಸಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ನೋಡೋಣ ಆಮೇಲೆ. It is probability based outcomes. Probability based outcomes. The third one, try ಮಾಡಿ. Why we want management tools? It is the third one we call it as, it is exactly to keep the track on operations also. It is to keep the track on operations. Now, sir, now my question here is unpredictable either. At the same time, it is non-routine also. And the fourth or the third one we call it as, it is probability based. Now, if that is the case, don't you think I need to go for adequate planning? Don't you think I need to go for adequate, I can say, it is controlling mechanisms? or we call it as adequate, I can say, measuring the targets on either on, I can say, short-term basis or medium-term basis. Third one, don't you think I need to control that complete mechanism also? Yes or no? Adukoskara I want management tools. The third one we call it as, it is to keep on three important things. To keep track on three important things. One we call it as because of uncertain, because of probabilistic nature, I need to have adequate plan ಇರಬೇಕು. ಈಗ ನನಗೇನು UPSC ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಏನು ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, don't you think if I am entering into UPSC, don't you think I need to have adequate plan? I need to have adequate what? Adequate, I can see, it is control or the measurements ಇರಬೇಕಿಲ್ಲಿ. Adequate plan ಜೊತೆಗೆ it is I need to have adequate measurements. At the same time, I need to check the success. I need to adequate, I can say, the control mechanism should also be there with respect to, I can say, checking on this management tools. Checking on this management, the tools. And the fourth one, sir, why we want management tools, sir, ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, the major one here is the resources are the finite in nature. The resources are finite in nature. Now the expectations are infinite. It is resources are the finite in nature. Resources are the finite in nature, and the expectations are, or the reality is, we call it as, we want to implement the resources effectively. Resources are finite, but expectations are infinite. It is infinite. Now ಇದನ್ನ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ, we want to plan, we want to have tools, we want to have strategies, we want to have, I can say, techniques, we want to have adequate the blueprints. All those things should be a part of, I can say, management tools anta. Okay alva? Now sir, with respect to our fifth chapter, our different management tools are divided it into two things. It is are divided it into the two things. It is divided into the two things. Sir, yavdu sir, I can say, two things anta nodadre, one we call it as general management tools. One we call it as general management tools, and the second one we call it as anile, it is quality. Exam ali majority quality kelidare. Majority the questions are with respect to what? The quality tools. Now yavyadu sir the quality tools we have? It is the quality as well as general tools ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಒಂದು 5 ಇದೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಒಂದು 5 ಇದೆ. ನೋಡೋದಾಗಿ, it is the first and the foremost one we call it as, it is a PERT. The first one we call it as the PERT. Sir, PERT ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, the program evaluation review technique. ನೋಡಿ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇದೆ. Program na we need to evaluate and we need to review that, and that technique we call it as the PERT technique. The PERT technique anta karitivi. Okay alva? Adadmele second one we call it as yavadilli? It is CPM. It is CPM andre critical path method or critical the path management anta kuda karitivi. Okay ನೋಡಿ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಇದೆ critical path. Now ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ it is some paths will be critical. ಈಗ for example, we take an example of KPSC. The which path is critical, sir, ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, it is prelims is critical now. Yes or no? Why? Because the ratio of success is minimal, and that ಅದನ್ನ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ we call it as critical path method. Critical the path method. Now sir, ಇವನ್ನೆಲ್ಲದನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಎನ್ಹಾನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ in administration we need to have, I can see, the third technique we call it as, it is PIME. Prime Allah. It is PIME. What is PIME? It is personal information management effectiveness. Personal information management effectiveness. Okay now, personal information management effectiveness. And the fourth one we call it as the post CORB. Postcard Allah, it is post corb. It is the post corb. The corb. Sir, post corb one we call it as a planning. The planning, it is organizing, staffing, directing. Planning, organizing, staffing, directing. Adadmele, it is coordination. CO, coordination. It is we call it as regulating or reporting. Reporting, and last one we call it as B andre. It is budgeting. We call it as budgeting. Followed by those things, we call it as the SWOT analysis. SWOT andre, strength, weakness, opportunity and threats. It is strength and weakness is internal, and opportunity and threats are external. Opportunity and threats are external. And the last one we call it as the PDCA circle. It is PDCA cycle. PDCA cycle. P andre plan. It is P is nothing but planning. D andre it is doing. C andre it is checking. And last one A andre it is appraisal or assessment. Appraisal or assessment. ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ವಾ? ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಈ ಕೀವರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ಸ್ ನ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದೀವೋ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ವೋ? ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ. ನಥಿಂಗ್ ಬಟ್ ವಿ ನೀಡ್ ಟು ಇಂಪ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ ದಿಸ್ ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಆನ್ ದ ನೀಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ವಿಲ್ ಸಿ ಒನ್ ಬೈ ಒನ್ ಏನೇನು ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ನೋಡೋಣ. ಓಕೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಈ ಕಡೆ ಒಂದು 5. ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಮೇಜರ್ ಆಗಿ ಇದನ್ನ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಸ್ಟಡಿಂಗ್ ಅಟ್ ಒನ್ ಗೋ. ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. ನಥಿಂಗ್ ಬಟ್ ಸರ್ PRT ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನೋಡಿದೆ ಹೇಳಿ ಈಗ. ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಇವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಷನ್. It is program evaluation review technique. Program evaluation review or technique. First one. Second one, CPM andre critical path management or critical path method anta kuda karitivi. Okay alva? Critical path method. Third one, PIME personal information management effectiveness. Personal information management effectiveness. Ivella nodi ಎಷ್ಟು ಕಷ್ಟ ಅನ್ಸಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ನಾನು ಟೀಚ್ ಮಾಡಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ನೋಡಿ, ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ PIME. ನಿಮ್ಗೆಲ್ಲ ಗೊತ್ತಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಬಟ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಯು ಡೋಂಟ್ ನೋ ಹೌ ಟು ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್, ಅಂಡ್ ಅದರ್ ರೀಸನ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ನೆವರ್ ರೈಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಇನ್ ಯುವರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ. ಓಕೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ದ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಒನ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಪೋಸ್ಟ್ ಕಾರ್ಪ್. ಪೋಸ್ಟ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಪ್ಲಾನಿಂಗ್. ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಒನ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸಿಂಗ್, ಅಂಡ್ ದ ಥರ್ಡ್ ಒನ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಸ್ಟಾಫಿಂಗ್. ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟಿಂಗ್ followed by we call it as coordination followed by reporting as well as budgeting. Okay alva? Yes, it is what we call as strength, weakness, opportunity and threat. Followed by PDCA cycle. It is PDCA ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ it is we call it as plan, do. It is plan ಮಾಡಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಇಂಪ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ. ಆ ಇಂಪ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟೇಷನ್ ಏನಾದರೂ ಫೇಲ್ಯೂರ್ ಇದ್ರೆ go for checking. ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ we call it as appraisal. Yes, it is this we call it as the general tools. Sir, quality tools ಯಾವುದು ಸರ್? 5 ಅಂತ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ it is again the quality tools 5. The first one we call it as brainstorming. The quality tools we call it as the brainstorming. ಕೇಳಿಲ್ವಾ ನೀವು brainstorming ನ? SL ಅಲ್ಲ, brainstorm ಮಾಡ್ತಿದೀವಿ, but brainstorming ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? We'll be studying here. Yes. Second one, nominal group technique. Second one we call it as nominal group. Last 3 exam allu kuda miss illa question idu, ee varsha miss agalla. It is nominal group a technique. Nominal group, I can say a technique. Nominal group a technique. And the third one we call it as yadappa. It is Pareto chart or Pareto analysis. The third one we call it as the Pareto chart. Pareto the chart followed by it is fishbone technique. Fishbone technique. And the last one we call it as yaudu. It is process chart. It is the last one we call it as the process chart. Okay, alva? ಈಗ ಏನಾದರೂ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಏನಾದರೂ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದ ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟೇಟಿವ್ ಆರ್ ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟೇಟಿವ್ ದ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಟೂಲ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ್ದು ಬರೀತೀರಾ? It is explain about the management tools ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ it is both. Can I write about all the 10? No. Avaga you should choose. You should choose, sir, ella baritini sir anta kelidre you can also write, but within limited content. Nothing but within some 2 to 3 lines ali you can write all the things by, I can say, by adding a flow chart. Idana chart aakadmele onondaಗಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಬೇಕು. ಓಕೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಎಸ್ ಸರ್, ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಬ್ರೀಫ್ ಐಡಿಯಾ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ ಬ್ರೈನ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಮ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಥಿಂಗ್ ಬಟ್ ಟು ಗೆಟ್ ಅ ಡಿಫರೆಂಟ್ ಐಡಿಯಾಸ್ ಆರ್ ಡೈವರ್ಸ್ ಐಡಿಯಾಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಫಾರ್ ರ್ಯಾಂಡಮ್ ಥಿಂಕಿಂಗ್. ದ ರ್ಯಾಂಡಮ್ ಥಿಂಕಿಂಗ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಇದನ್ನ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಲ್ವಾ, ಅದನ್ನ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಬ್ರೈನ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಮ್. Take an example of it is I was traveling from my home towards, I can say, NammaKPSC. Now ಬರ್ತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ now think that I'll be thinking about traffic ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ. ಬಟ್ ಅವ್ನು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರ್ತೀನಿ, ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಬರ್ತಿರ್ತೀನಲ್ವಾ, ಓಕೆ ಇದರಿಂದ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅದರಿಂದ. Now all this pointers comes under what? Brainstorm. Yes, ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ what can be the failure of Chandrayaan 2? Brainstorming. It can be both for positive and it can be both for negative also. Now the thought process, it is if I'm implementing on ground or if I'm going for putting all my ideas on the paper, or I can say it is virtually, and this we call it as brainstorm. Now brainstorming, don't you think I'll be getting n number of information? And ಅದನ್ನ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ priority basis ಮೇಲೆ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ we call it as nominal group technique. Navigate traffic, there are n number of reasons, but the major reason ಯಾವುದು? Population. The major reason here is the first is population, second is more vehicular, I can say, the purchase. ಇದನ್ನ priority ಕೊಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಅದನ್ನ? Nominal group technique. And the third one sir, Pareto chart ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ 80:20 ರೇಷಿಯೋ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಬಟ್ ಅದ್ರ Pareto chart ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. Now what is this 80:20 chart? It is 80:20 chart anta. Now I can see it is 80% of the effect comes from elinda 20%. Nothing but ಈಗ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ನಾನು ಏನಾದರೂ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಪ್ರಿಲಿಮ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸರ್ ಏನ್ ಸರ್ ಕಾಸ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ದಟ್ ಕಾಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಮಿನಿಮಲ್. ನಥಿಂಗ್ ಬಟ್ ನೀವು ರಿವೈಸ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ or you have not solved adequate test papers. Nothing but 80% of impact comes from Melinda, 20% of causes, and this we call it as 80:20. 80:20 andre 80% ende, 20% neeralla. Yes or no? 80:20 majorly talks about, it is 80% talks about impact. You gotta think that we have more expectations on the budget. I think that ಅದು ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗತ್ತದು. ನಾವು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾರಣಗಳು ಏನಿರ್ಬೋದು ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟ್ ಆನ್ ದ, ಐ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸೇ, ನಿರ್ಮಲಾ ಸೀತಾರಾಮನ್, ಅಂಡ್ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ 20%. ಅಂಡ್ ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿನೇಷನ್. ನಾವು ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿನೇಷನ್ಗೆ 80% ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬರ್ತಿತ್ತು? ಓನ್ಲಿ ಫ್ರಮ್ 20% ಆಫ್ ದ ಕಾಸಸ್. ಬಟ್ ಇದರ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಆರ್ ಇಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಬಿ ವಿತ್ ರೆಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ ಟು ಮಿಕ್ಸಿಂಗ್, ಆರ್ ಇಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಬಿ ವಿತ್ ರೆಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ ಟು ವಾಟ್? It is, I can say, transportation, storage, all the things. It is causes are minimal, but effects nodi large, wider. Yes, but explain martin examples kottu explain martin, not an issue. Next one we call it as fishbone technique. Sir, fishbone technique andre enilla fish bone tara irutte. Nothing but for an impact or for a reason or for any issue will be having n number of causes, n number of sub causes also. Sub causes also. Now example nododadre, now take an example of why the Swachh Bharat mission was success and why Nirmal Bharat was a failure mission. Because we had n number of causes, n number of sub causes also. Yes or no? It can be for negative or it can be for positive. Adukoskar quality tools anta karitevi. It can be used for both. Quality, the tools. And the next one we call it as the process chart. Now what do you mean process chart anta kelidre? Ondadmele ondu baruttallva. It is we call it as process. Take an example of it is standing in a queue. Standing in a queue, don't you think it's a process? Obradmele obru. Ade riti, take an example of if you want to generate or if you want to go for production of vaccination. Can I directly say that vaccination aguanta? No, there is some process, alva. Nothing but I need to plan. I need to go for research and development. I need to, I can say, get an approval. The fourth one, I need to have lab. Fifth one will be with respect to I need to go for implementation on the sample basis. And finally, reporting it to the market. And this we call it as the process. Sir, yeno arthane agilla sir anta kelidre. If you take an example of history, history ಹೆಂಗಿರ್ತಾವ process. Ancient ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ medieval ಬರುತ್ತಾ, medieval ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ancient ಬರುತ್ತಾ. Nothing but there is a process. And this we call it as process chart. Ancient, medieval and modern. Ade ancient alli nodadare we have different, I can say Dynasties starting from IVC or I can say pre-Vedic or pre-IVC, followed by we call it as IVC, followed by Vedic, Mauryas, Guptas, post-Guptas, Harshvardhanas, irala bartara. Adadmele the Cholas, the Cheras, the Pandyas, followed by Delhi Sultanate, Mughals, etc. Nothing but if I am organizing this based on the time period, and this we call it as process chart. Okay na? Ishtantu broad gothirli, but adadmele we'll discuss one by one. Exactly, yes. Exactly, Bapu, yes. It is program evaluation and review technique, critical path management, personal information management effectiveness. Audu, it is a plan, organize, staffing, directing, coordinating, regulating and budgeting, as well as the cause and effect. Ee moorantu cause and effect ಬಗ್ಗೆ study ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ it is ಬೇರೆ ಕಲರ್ ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? It is ಗೊತ್ತಿರಲಿ. Yes, this one majorly talks about, this three majorly talks about the cause and the effect. Cause and the effect, the things. Yes,